that week after school, Jotaro meets up with Josuke, and they get to talking. Jotaro tells him that their first priority is to get the arrow out of Morio. It turns out he knew to come to the town because of his personal research into the town's history with its recent murders and disappearances, and he asked his grandfather, Joseph Joestar, to get a picture of where he could find the arrow with his own stand, Hermit Purple, and a picture of Angelo was produced. He researched Angelo's history and came to Morio to find him. He's currently hidden the arrow somewhere safe, and has plans to get it out of Morio and into the hands of the Speedwagon Foundation. He warns Josuke not to trust anyone, as their enemy clearly has many allies lurking in the shadows. Josuke agrees to help him, and asks Jotaro to help him find the murderer plaguing Morio. Jotaro agrees, concluding that the murderer is likely linked to Killer Queen. He leaves, saying he has to do some research. After this conversation, we cut to Koichi's POV, who turned out was listening in on the conversation the whole time. He's bewildered from what he just heard. Turns out he's been keeping a close eye on Josuke since the Sunmar hostage situation, since the girl taken hostage was actually his sister, and he's been wanting to know more about how exactly Josuke saved her. Josuke leaves school and Koichi begins to follow him again, but this time, when Josuke rounds the corner, he suddenly confronts Koichi and demands to know why he's been following him. Koichi lies and says that he wasn't following him, but then he asks Josuke about the explosion on his street. Josuke lies back and says that his neighbor just had a gas explosion. That was all. He leaves Koichi, and Koichi goes home. The next day, Koichi rides to school on his new bike, and has his run-in with Tamami Kobayashi. Unbeknownst to Koichi and the rest of the main cast, Tamami, Hazamada, and Akira Otoishi are all allied with Killer Queen's user. They joined up with him in exchange for the promise of money and power. They've been instructed to get the arrow from Josuke, since Killer Queen currently believes that Josuke has it. Tamami has noticed Koichi hanging around Josuke, and assumes that he's connected to the arrow. He goes after Koichi on his own, with Hazamada in hot pursuit. Tamami tries to extort Koichi just like he does in the original, but this time he demands the arrow as payment. He's still pretty greedy though, so he also demands some money as well. Koichi says he doesn't have it, but Tamami doesn't believe him. After all, Koichi can see the lock, confirming that he is a stand user, so he must know where the arrow is. Koichi, being unable to compensate Tamami's demands, feels guiltier and guiltier until he no longer wants to be alive. Before he can do anything though, Josuke shows up to save him. To save Koichi, Josuke confesses that the arrow is with Jotaro. Tamami demands to know where, but Josuke says he doesn't know. Tamami doesn't believe him and refuses to release Koichi unless Josuke tells him where it is. Being unable to save Koichi, he feels guilty for getting him involved in this, and falls under the lock's spell as well. Seeing Josuke about to be defeated by Tamami, Koichi realizes the only way to stop Tamami is to absolve his guilt. His guilt for making Josuke have to come save him is greater than the guilt he feels for being unable to compensate Tamami, and so the lock is absolved, and he awakens Echoes Act 1. With Echoes, he's able to defeat Tamami and release Josuke from the lock's spell. They corner Tamami and demand that he tells them where they can find Killer Queen's user. Tamami is about to confess, not ready to give his life for this pursuit, when suddenly he grabs a pen from his own pocket and, game ends himself by stabbing himself. Josuke and Koichi notice him looking at something far away though, and by following his eyes they see what looks like another Tamami watching them from the bushes, making a stabbing motion with his hand. The other Tamami runs off. Josuke, being too kind-hearted to let the real Tamami die, goes back and heals him, but it's already too late. Koichi tries to use Act 1 to find the other Tamami, but he is long gone. Josuke fully explains the situation to Koichi, and says that it's likely that he will continue to be targeted now that he's shown himself as an ally of Josuke. Koichi is afraid, but he says he'll help Josuke. After all, innocent people like his sister are getting caught up in this, so if he's able to join in and protect Morio, he'll do it. That evening, Josuke informs Jotaro about Koichi and their run-in with Tamami. Jotaro says that what they saw is likely some kind of stand that can copy and control others, since he's dealt with stands like it in the past. He starts to look into who could be behind it. Meanwhile, at school, Josuke hears about an incident involving one of his classmates. One of them has been hospitalized after getting into a fight with his friend, Toshikazu Hazamada. Rumors are being flung all around the school that Hazamada's friend gouged out his own eye after the fight, though strangely it was at his home. Hazamada was nowhere near when it happened. This pretty much confirms to Josuke that Hazamada is likely the stand user thereafter, since the attack on Hazamada's friend is very similar to the one that Tamami suffered. Josuke also thinks that he notices Hazamada watching him during class, though he's not as sure about that. Rather than confronting him directly, Josuke and Koichi dig through Hazamada's locker and find his stand, just like they do in the original. This arc would play out pretty much exactly the same way as it does in canon, ending with Hazamada getting hospitalized by the biker gang. His plan was to stay hidden and take out the main gang from a distance, but once he saw his locker being broken into, he panicked and went on the offensive, resolving to kill Josuke, Koichi, and Jotaro right then and there. Once he is hospitalized though, Jotaro and Josuke go to question him, and Hazamada reveals the bit of lore about how stand users are drawn to one another. They ask him who Killer Queen's user is, but Hazamada confesses he doesn't know. Killer Queen's user only ever spoke to him over the phone, so he never saw him. We see a conversation over the phone between Otoishi and Killer Queen. Otoishi is frustrated at the loss of Hazamada and Tamami, and resolves to go after Josuke and the gang himself. Killer Queen quickly forbids him, saying he will get himself killed, and they need his stand Red Hot Chili Pepper for reconnaissance. Otoishi gets mad and blows up the phone. We see Killer Queen's user panic a bit. His forces are dwindling, and if they don't get the arrow soon, Jotaro will get it out of Morio and it'll be gone forever. And if they lose the arrow, he'll never let Kira hear the end of it. Otoishi sends Red Hot Chili Pepper to attack Okuyasu at home, seeing him as the weakest link, and thinking it could give him a lead as to where the arrow is. Okuyasu claps him back pretty hard though. This fight is pretty much the same as the one they have in the field outside of Morio and canon. I'm just moving it from there to here in the Nijimura house. As they engage in a full-on battle, Josuke takes notice from his house and runs over to Okuyasu's to see what's up. Okuyasu corners Red Hot Chili Pepper in the attic where Killer Queen blew up the wiring, effectively trapping him. Chili Pepper tries to goad Okuyasu by bringing up Keicho's death. Okuyasu admits that Keicho deserved what happened to him, as things like that will always come back to get you in the end. He still manages to trick him into exposing an intact fuse breaker in the wall, and he sucks Okuyasu into it. Josuke arrives just in time to bring Okuyasu back by reconnecting him with his severed arm. Josuke tries to call Jotaro to tell him what happened, when Chili Pepper intercepts the call. He thanks Josuke for telling him where to find Jotaro, and by extension the arrow. Knowing Chili Pepper will get to the hotel before they do, Josuke and Okuyasu call Koichi and tell him to send echoes to warn Jotaro about Chili Pepper. Meanwhile, all three of them rush to the Grand Hotel to get there in time. Koichi sends echoes, barely warning Jotaro in the nick of time. Jotaro stops time, allowing him to jump out of the way as there's an explosion of electricity from the socket as Chili Pepper attacks. He is knocked unconscious. Koichi sees all of this through echoes, stunned. Chili Pepper plans to search the hotel room for the arrow and finish Jotaro off. Koichi warns him to back down as he's coming to Jotaro's location as well. Chili Pepper and Echoes engage in a long-range stand battle. Koichi misdirects Chili Pepper from his location by implanting the sound of false footsteps around him, but Chili Pepper ultimately gets the upper hand and corners Echoes. He's about to kill him when Koichi has his awakening to Act 2. Koichi tricks Chili Pepper into thinking an explosion is happening nearby due to him shorting out the hotel's circuit, making him flinch and retreat, only to Koichi to use a gust of wind from a sound effect to launch him towards the pavement. This blows Chili Pepper out of the hotel balcony, sending him splatting on the pavement. He is able to flee through a street lamp power line. Josuke, Okuyasu, and Koichi arrive at the Grand Hotel. Josuke heals Jotaro, saving his life. Realizing how dire of a situation they're in and fearing another strike from Red Hot Chili Pepper, Jotaro says they can't afford to wait anymore. They have to get the arrow out of Morio now. As Josuke and his gang go home for the night, we see the silhouette of a teenage girl watching them from the street. The next day at first light, Jotaro leads the gang to a field outside of Morio, fearing being overheard by Chili Pepper again. The group silently makes their way out of town. When they reach the outskirts where there's no electricity or power lines, Jotaro discusses his new plan. He reveals that he's hidden the arrow outside of Morio, worried about the enemy getting their hands on it if anything happened to him. The arrow is buried in a hillside, in the farm country near Morio. He was planning to meet up with a contact from the Speedwagon Foundation last night before Red Hot Chili Pepper's attack to hand the arrow over. But the Foundation agent on the outskirts of Morio has gone silent. He asks Josuke to accompany him to retrieve the arrow and find the agent. Okuyasu asks Jotaro what he and Koichi are supposed to do, and Jotaro responds that they need to keep Chili Pepper away from where he and Josuke are going. Jotaro doubts that Chili Pepper will show himself again soon due to the major whooping he just got from Koichi, but they can't take any risks. They need to direct Chili Pepper's attention away from Jotaro and Josuke. When Okuyasu again asks how they're supposed to do that, Jotaro just tells him to get creative. The group splits up, Jotaro and Josuke leaving to get the arrow from the hillside, and Koichi and Okuyasu leaving to go lure out Chili Pepper's user. Jotaro and Josuke make it to the field near the hillside, when suddenly they get shot at. Jotaro stops time and he grabs Josuke and gets them both out of the path of the bullets. They quickly take cover and hide under a rock. Jotaro goes to scout what attacked them when he sees Bug-Eaten the rat escape into a drainage ditch. When Jotaro tells Josuke about it, he guesses the rat must have had a nest where Jotaro hit the arrow and got pricked by it. Now the rat is a stand user and will kill anyone who comes near its territory. If they want to get the arrow, they'll have to kill the rat, thus beginning the hunt. They track the rat to the farmhouse like they do in the original and find it. But instead of them getting split up and fighting two rats, the first one gets the drop on them again and succeeds in shooting Jotaro's hand before running out the door. Once Jotaro's hand is healed, the two men take the rifle rounds they find from the house and go to hunt the rat. Bug-Eaten lures them to the hill where the arrow is hidden, and they have their battle. It goes and ends the same way as it does in the original, with Josuke getting the final shot on Bug-Eaten and killing him. They successfully retrieve the arrow from Bug-Eaten's abandoned nest. On the way back, they find the melted corpse of the Foundation agent at the rendezvous spot Jotaro was going to meet him at. Bug-Eaten got to him first. Jotaro realizes how tight of a spot they're in. He says he'll make arrangements for the Speedwagon Foundation to come pick up the arrow again as soon as possible. They head back to Morio and find Okuyasu and Koichi, and Jotaro makes plans to check out of the Grand Hotel the next day.